Camron didn't just fall off the map, he disappeared from the version of hip-hop that once made him look untouchable. And the craziest part is, the image that made fans stop and stare was not a diss track, not a court case, not some wild scandal. It was a minivan. The same Harlem legend who once made a pink fur coat look more powerful than a bulletproof vest was suddenly being seen in the kind of ride people associate with school drop-offs and grocery runs. For the internet, that one moment became a whole story. They saw the van and decided the money was gone, the glory was over, and the king of Dipset had been humbled by life. But that is only the surface. Camron was never just another rapper with flashy clothes and a loud personality. At his peak, he was the temperature of New York. He gave Harlem a new language, made Pink dangerous, turned Dipset into a movement, and walked through the early 2000s like he knew the whole culture was watching. Kids copied his slang, rappers copied his confidence, and fans looked at him like he was proof that street style could become mainstream power. So when people look at Cam today and say his life seems sad, they are really comparing two different men. One was the loud, fearless star driving luxury cars through Harlem with the world in his hand. The other is older, quieter in some ways, still loud in others, carrying years of public drama, private grief, broken friendships, health battles, and memories that money could never erase. And that is where the real story begins. Because the minivan is not the tragedy. The real tragedy is everything Cam survived before he ever got inside it. Before we go deeper, comment where you are watching from right now. If you think Camron's story is a fall-off, type 1. If you think he is a survivor who beat the game in his own way, type 2. And if you follow real hip-hop stories, subscribe now, because this one gets deeper than most fans realize. To understand why people react so strongly to Camron today, you have to remember what he represented back then. In the early 2000s, he was not simply famous. He was Harlem walking in human form. He had the arrogance, the humor, the fashion, the slang, the confidence, and the kind of reckless creative energy that made people either love him or feel threatened by him. He did not ask permission to be different. He made different look expensive. Dipset was more than a rap group. It was a brand before rappers understood branding the way they do now. Cam, Jim Jones, Jules Santana, and the whole movement created a world that fans wanted to enter. The flags, the colors, the ad-libs, the mixtapes, the street DVD, energy, all of it felt raw, loud, and impossible to ignore. Cam was the face of that movement, and for a moment, it looked like nothing could stop him. But when a man rises that high, every step down looks like a collapse. Fans do not always allow artists to age. They freeze them at their loudest, richest, most stylish moment, then judge the rest of their life against that picture. That is what happened with Cam. People still remember the pink Range Rover, the pink fur, the Harlem swagger, the way he could turn a simple phrase into something the streets repeated for years. So when the music slowed down and the fashion changed, people started whispering. Was Cam still rich? Was he still powerful? Did the Dipset legacy fade? Was the man who once controlled the room now just another older rapper trying to stay relevant? But that question misses something important. Cam was never built like a regular celebrity. He did not need to chase the same spotlight forever, because he already understood something many artists learned too late. Fame is loud, but ownership is quieter. And sometimes, when people think you vanished, you are really just moving differently. The public drama made that harder to see. For years, fans watched Camron's relationships with people close to him shift from brotherhood to tension, then back to peace, then back into tension again. And nothing hit harder than the complicated history with Jim Jones. These were not two random rappers throwing shots for attention. These were two men whose names were built together, whose legacy came from the same Harlem soil, whose success was tied to the same flag. That is why every time Cam and Jim exchange words, the internet reacts like it is watching a family argument spill into the street. It is not just entertainment. It feels like old pain being reopened in public. Fans remember them standing side by side when Dipset felt unstoppable. They remember the music, the videos, the interviews, the movement. So when they see jokes, accusations, or subtle shots online, it feels bigger than rap. And that is part of what makes Cam's current life look messy from the outside. A man who helped build one of the most iconic crews in New York history is now often discussed through the lens of old beefs and unresolved tension. Instead of just celebrating the legacy, fans keep asking why the brotherhood could not stay solid. Was it money, ego, business, street pride, years of misunderstanding? The truth is probably a mix of all of it. Cam has always had a sharp tongue, and that made him entertaining, but it also made every conflict bigger. He knows how to turn a sentence into a headline. He knows how to make people laugh while still landing a direct hit. That skill helped make him famous. But it also meant that personal issues could become public theater fast. And when you get older, public theater starts to look different. At 25, beef looks like energy. At 50, it can look like exhaustion. But for Cam, the microphone was never just for music. It was always a weapon, a shield, and sometimes the only way he knew how to speak his truth. Then there is the personal side, the part that made fans argue even harder. Cam has never been afraid to speak on relationships, money, loyalty, and what he believes people owe each other. That honesty is part of why people watch him, but it also gets him in trouble. When private history becomes podcast conversation, the audience does not just listen, it judges. One public relationship discussion turned into a bigger debate because of the way Cam described the past. Some viewers felt he was being brutally honest. Others thought he sounded cold, and that is the thing about Cam. He often talks like a man who has been hurt, tested, and disappointed so many times that softness feels dangerous. He can turn pain into a joke before anyone gets the chance to see the wound. But behind that tough delivery is a deeper pattern. Cam's life has been filled with people leaving, changing, passing away, or becoming strangers. When someone experiences enough loss, trust can start to feel like a risky investment. That does not excuse every word or every public reaction, but it explains why his view of loyalty sounds so intense. To Cam, loyalty is not a cute idea. It is survival. The internet, however, does not always care about context. It takes a clip, turns it into a debate, and suddenly an entire life gets reduced to one sentence. That has happened to Cam many times. A joke becomes a headline. A comment becomes proof. A rough moment becomes the whole identity. And that is why his story is so complicated. Cam is not easy to paint as only a victim, only a villain, only a legend, or only a man past his prime. He is all of those things depending on which moment you freeze. He can be funny, harsh, loyal, petty, wise, reckless, generous, guarded, and wounded all in the same week. That is not a clean celebrity story. That is a human one. And human stories are always harder for the internet to handle. The reason Camron's life feels heavier than fans expect is because the losses started early and kept coming. Before the fame, before Dipset, before the pink fur became an iconic hip-hop image, Cam had already seen how fast life could turn. Harlem gave him style, confidence, and identity, but it also gave him funerals, pressure, and a front-row seat to how dangerous the environment could become. One of the biggest wounds in his story is the loss of people who were supposed to grow old with him. Friends, relatives, artists, loved ones, people connected to different chapters of his life were gone before their time. The death of Big L especially sits like a shadow over Cam's story. Big L was not just another rapper from the neighborhood. He was connected to Cam's early path, part of the world that helped shape what Harlem rap could become. When someone like that is taken, it does not just hurt personally. It changes the future everyone imagined. Then there was bloodshed, another painful loss tied to Cam's early circle. These were not distant names in a documentary. These were people who mattered before the world even understood what Cam could become. Losing them meant Cam carried grief into success. He did not become famous after escaping pain. He became famous while carrying it. That detail matters because fans often look at money and assume it cancels out suffering. They see the cars, the jewelry, the magazine covers, the stage lights, and think the wounds must have healed. But grief does not care how famous you are. It follows you into hotel rooms, studios, interviews, and award shows. Sometimes the louder a person becomes in public, the more silence they are trying to outrun in private. Cam's humor, arrogance, and flashy style may have looked like pure confidence, but they also may have been armor. And the thing about armor is simple. People only wear it when they know life can attack. As Cam grew older, the losses became even more personal. The kind of pain that changes a man is not always loud. Sometimes it is sitting beside a parent whose health is fading. Sometimes it is watching someone you love become a memory. Sometimes it is realizing that the people who once made you feel grounded are no longer here to answer the phone. Cam made choices that showed where his heart really was. At different points, he stepped back from chasing music the way fans expected because family mattered more. That is something the internet rarely gives artists credit for. Fans want constant output, constant drama, constant proof that a legend still has it. But life does not pause for an album rollout. When your mother needs you, when family becomes the priority, the charts can wait. That part of Cam's life challenges the lazy fall-off story, because stepping away from the brightest spotlight is not always failure. Sometimes it is responsibility, sometimes it is love, Sometimes it is a man understanding that the people who raised him are more important than another hit record. Still, the world kept judging from the outside. They saw fewer musical moments and assumed the machine had stopped. They saw him in different spaces and assumed the old Cam was gone. But maybe the old Cam had to change because life demanded a different version of him. The death of his mother became one of the deepest emotional turns in his later life. For someone who had already lost so much, losing that kind of anchor is not just sadness. It is a before and after moment. The person who knew you before the fame, before the money, before the headlines, before the world called you a legend, when that person is gone, a part of your original self feels harder to reach. And yet, Cam kept moving. That is the part people overlook. He did not carry grief gracefully every second, but he carried it. He kept showing up. And sometimes survival does not look inspirational. Sometimes it looks messy, sarcastic, guarded, and tired, but still standing. Another chapter in Cam's transformation came from his health and his body. Hip-hop loves to talk about toughness, but it rarely talks honestly about what years of stress, injuries, aging, and lifestyle can do to a person. Fans expect rappers to stay frozen in the same body forever, as if the man in the music video is supposed to exist unchanged 20 years later. Cam's physical struggles became part of the larger conversation about how different his life looked. When people saw him move differently or heard about health issues, some used it as another excuse to say he was finished. But that reaction says more about the audience than it does about Cam. Getting older is not failure. Surviving long enough to age is actually rare in the world he came from. That is one of the quiet themes of his life. Cam made it to an age that many people around him never reached. The culture celebrates youth, danger, and reckless energy, but it does not always know how to celebrate the man who lives long enough to slow down. In hip-hop, especially street-rooted hip-hop, growing older can almost feel like betrayal to the image fans bought into. They want the wild stories, the fearless attitude, the expensive chaos. They do not always know what to do with peace, but peace may be exactly what Cam started choosing. Not perfect peace, not silent peace, not peace without jokes or arguments, but a different kind of control. He moved into media, podcasting, sports talk, business, and ownership. He found a lane where his personality was not stuck in the past. Instead of begging the music industry for attention, he built a new stage. That matters because reinvention is one of the hardest things for any rapper to pull off. A lot of artists spend their later years trying to recreate the exact energy that made them famous. Cam did something smarter. He took the same wit, timing, confidence, and Harlem attitude that powered his music and transferred it into conversation. The result was not the death of Camron. It was Camron becoming a different kind of boss. The media chapter changed the way people had to view Cam. Suddenly, the man some fans thought was fading became part of a new wave of athlete and rapper-driven entertainment. His sports show and online presence proved that his voice still had value, not just because of nostalgia, but because Cam understands timing. He knows when to joke, when to provoke, when to let silence make something funnier, and when to turn a small moment into a viral clip. That is not luck, that is skill. The same instincts that made him a standout rapper made him dangerous on a podcast set. He can read a room, he can create tension, he can make fans feel like they are watching something unscripted, even when the business behind it is very real. And that is where the sad life narrative begins to fall apart. Because if Cam were truly finished, people would not still react every time he speaks. If his name had no power, old beefs would not trend. If his personality had no weight, brands and viewers would not keep showing up. The truth is, Cam still knows how to control attention. He just does it from a different throne now. His reunion and business chemistry with Ma Dollar E also added another layer to the story. Two Harlem figures with their own complicated history found a way to turn friendship, humor, sports, and street-earned perspective into a new platform. That is not something every artist can do after decades in the game. It takes humility, timing, forgiveness, and business sense. Of course, Cam is still Cam. The jokes can still cut deep. The comments can still create controversy. The old instincts have not disappeared. But there is something impressive about seeing a rapper from his era find a second life without pretending to be 25 again. That may be why some fans misunderstand him. They keep looking for the old Cam in the old places. But the real Cam moved. He is not trying to relive the pink fur moment every day. He already did that. Now he is proving that a legend can survive the end of one era and still build another. Still, none of the wins erase the sadness. That is what makes Camron's story powerful. It is not a simple comeback tale where everything bad disappears once the money returns. The grief is still there. The broken friendships are still there. The memories are still there. The people who are gone are still gone. No business deal, viral clip, or successful show can bring them back. That is why the question, is Camron's life sad, has two answers. Yes, because loss has followed him for most of his journey. Yes, because he has buried people he loved. Yes, because the crew that once represented unity became a source of public tension. Yes, because growing older in a culture that worships youth can feel lonely. Yes, because even legends have nights where the silence gets loud. But no, his life is not sad in the way the internet wants it to be. He is not simply a fallen star. He is not just a man in a minivan. He is not proof that fame always ends in embarrassment. He is proof that survival can look different from what fans expect. The man who once made Flash his signature eventually learned that Flash is not the whole game. Cars change, jewelry gets old, trends move on, crews split, audiences grow restless. But ownership, health, family, wisdom, and peace become more valuable with time. Cam's later life may not look like his peak, but that does not make it failure. It makes it evolution. And maybe the minivan became such a strong symbol because it challenged what people wanted from him. They wanted the cartoon version of a Harlem legend forever. They wanted pink fur, luxury cars, wild quotes, and endless arrogance. But life gave them a man who had survived too much to care about proving the same point every day. That is not weakness. That is maturity with scars on it. The most honest way to describe Cam today is this. He is still funny, still sharp, still controversial, still proud, still wounded, and still here. And in a world that took so many people from his circle, still being here might be the biggest flex of all. So what is the real lesson in Camron's story? It is not that fame fades. Everybody knows that. It is not that money cannot protect you from pain. Most people learn that eventually. The deeper lesson is that survival does not always look heroic while it is happening. Sometimes survival looks like arguments, reinvention, public mistakes, private grief, changed priorities, and a man slowly becoming someone his younger self might not even recognize. Camron's life is a strategy lesson for every artist watching. First, never let one version of success trap you forever. Cam could have spent the rest of his life chasing the exact same image that made him famous, but instead, he found a way to turn personality into ownership. Second, protect your relationships before the internet turns them into entertainment. The Dipset story shows how powerful brotherhood can be, but also how painful it becomes when pride, money, and old wounds stay unresolved. Third, understand that peace is not always flashy. Sometimes peace looks boring to people who only respect chaos. But there is also a human lesson here. Do not judge a man's whole life from one image. A minivan is not a funeral for a career. A quieter lifestyle is not proof of defeat. Getting older is not falling off. Choosing family, health, and ownership over endless performance is not weakness. In a culture that often rewards destruction, simply making it to tomorrow with your name, your mind, and your dignity still intact is a victory. Cam lost friends. He lost loved ones. He lost parts of the brotherhood that helped build his legend. He battled pain, public criticism, changing times, and the pressure of being compared to his younger self forever. But he also rebuilt. He created new lanes. He raised his son. He kept his voice alive. He found business after music, humor after grief, and movement after heartbreak. So when people ask if Camron's life is sad, the better question is this: how much can one man lose and still keep standing? Because that is what Cam represents now. Not the fall of a flashy rapper, but the survival of a Harlem legend who lived long enough to choose peace over performance. If this story made you look at Cam differently, hit like, share this video with another real hip-hop fan, and subscribe for more stories about the legends, the drama, and the truth behind the headlines. Comment 1 if you think Cam is still winning. Comment 2 if you think the old Dipset days can never be replaced. And tell us where you are watching from.